Hello, this is TelecomTV. I'm Martin Warwick and I'm talking with Nachman Shelef, who is the Vice President and General Manager of HP ContextStream. Nachman, welcome and thanks for talking to us. Now, NFV has sprung from nowhere, seemingly from nowhere, 3 years ago or just under, to the state that it's in now, which it's been hectic, it's been remorseless, been an enormous amount of acceleration and growth. Now is the time we're getting beyond the proofs of concept, we're getting beyond into the field trials and beyond. There are indeed some limited commercial applications and services out there and deployments. What do you think are the challenges to NFV adoption right now?
So, before addressing the challenges, and there are, significant challenges, I think we don't, as an industry, take enough credit for what actually has already happened, which is the first 2 of 4 phases of network function virtualization. The first 2 phases have to do with decoupling the functions from the hardware and actually running on off-the-shelf servers. And the second is virtualization. So not only running bare metal on servers, but actually running in a virtualized environment. Both of those first 2 phases have been happening over the past few years in the transformation there is very fast. And we see this in HP and the growth of our NFV business and the platforms that a lot of this virtualization is based on. However, it becomes trickier when you go to the third and the fourth phases of network function virtualization. The third being cloudification, and the fourth being decomposition to subfunctions. And there you start hitting the barriers that you asked about. And the reason that is, the barriers are there is that those 2 phases touch on the infrastructure itself and the connectivity between the functions, the SDN part. The first 2 phases you can do in a sort of a black box type of approach. So you have your traditional network function. You can run it on servers, bare metal, without any of the rest of the network being affected. You can even run it virtualized on a server without any of the rest of the network being affected. But once you start trying to get the full benefits of this transformation by doing cloudification and decomposition, now the infrastructure has a role to play, and that's where some of the barriers are. And those barriers not only include the functionality needed, but also can you do it at carrier scale, at carrier performance, at carrier reliability?
Thank you. Let's move on then. You mentioned HP ContextStream, as you're perfectly entitled and valid in doing so. So I'd like to ask you, how is HP ContextStream helping to further the adoption of NFV? What do you do?
Right, so at HP ContextStream, we provide the fabric for this carrier-grade SDN connectivity that includes within it dynamic virtual networking capabilities that are part of what's needed for all network functions. These include things like elasticity, distribution across multiple data centers, being subscriber and service aware, providing dynamic connectivity such as service function chaining and load balancing as part of that, and even providing analytics collection as part of the connectivity function. All those capabilities we're providing as part of the fabric infrastructure. By doing that, those functions do not need to be in each and every virtual network function. They are provided as part of the infrastructure for all network functions. Therefore, the network functions themselves can be simpler. We can accelerate and reduce the time to develop them and to test them. The overall system quality is higher. And the barrier for the developers, since they only need to deal with the actual network function itself and not the related connectivity, becomes simpler. To summarize that, we make the network functions simple by taking on into the fabric infrastructure the common functions, the dynamic connectivity common functions.
Okay, thank you. You were talking about challenges, and we were talking about challenges a few minutes ago, and one of them is this notion of the perception of performance. What is meant by that to begin with?
So when you're dealing with carrier environments, then the required performance and scale of solutions is quite significant. And therefore, things that are easily shown in a POC in the lab may not at all be possible to scale up to the kind of performance and scale that are needed and high availability that are needed in true carrier deployments. That is one of the barriers that is holding back deployment, because the proof of concept is at one level of performance, and the need for deployment is a different order of magnitude. In fact, as I mentioned before, key to overcoming the barriers are moving a lot of the dynamic connectivity functions from the VNFs into the infrastructure. That just makes the problem of performance and scale and high availability of the infrastructure even more dramatic.
So, logical next question, what do you do about it?
So one of the things we've been doing is not only providing this performance and scale within our fabric solution in POCs and in early deployments, but also doing the kind of testing open to the industry that shows what is possible. And in fact, in the show today, we're demonstrating a OpenFlow switch solution in software that provides 1 billion rules, which is needed for this dynamic connectivity that we talked about, at 1 terabit per second. This level of performance and scale is definitely needed for carrier infrastructure solutions and has not been demonstrated yet in the industry. In fact, the reason we demonstrated it here is in some discussions with potential carrier customers, they brought up the question of whether it's even possible to have a SDN-based solution at that scale. And we knew that it is possible, and we wanted the rest of the industry to know that it is possible.
Thank you. Now, can we talk about use cases finally? HP ContextStream has been doing SDN for a long time now, and where do you see the traction in the market now, and why?
So the traction in the market as far as use cases is actually quite broad. There are initial deployments and a lot of POC activity around many different use cases, which could be expected given that we're talking about a very basic transformation of networking, and therefore it touches many use cases. So examples are in the voice domain, virtualizing the IMS functions, the session border control functions. In the consumer data, service function chaining, both at the GI LAN and for Wi-Fi solutions. Virtualizing the actual mobile core, the EPC, is another area. And of course, not only for carrier consumer services, but also for carrier business solutions, virtual CPE solutions, and as well as SDN VPN solutions are all being both tested and showing some initial production deployments. I think the more interesting question from a business perspective that everyone is asking is, okay, so all this is happening and it's so broad, what's going to happen in large enough quantity to be meaningful and pull ahead and kind of be the poster child for virtualization from a use case perspective. And there, I think the jury's still out. I think the areas where we can expect that to happen are areas where there is a lot of change in the industry. And where there's a lot of change, it makes sense to adopt the new way of doing things as opposed to investing in the old way of doing things. Some candidates there are around adoption of business solutions like virtual CPE and VPN services. Others are in the mobile core, but for new applications like IoT applications, in addition to the consumer mobile core, which is probably going to be massively virtualized with the 5G deployments. So those two areas are probably areas that could see massive adoption. But all the other areas are currently moving forward at a moderate clip.
Okay, Nachman Shalev, thank you very much indeed.
My pleasure.